Have you ever had the idea of building the real anti-gravity device? Well, everyone has his own thoughts when it comes to this, but unless you are not interested, at the end of the day you want to make sure what you've learned is varied. And this will immediately give you the idea of building the real anti-gravity prototype. These anti-gravity phenomena have been something that the government didn't want any one of us to be aware of, especially when it comes to how they operate. In these flying platforms we actually recognize like Odyssey Car X1, Sulfate Generator, Gravinkov platform, and Schauberg's device. But forcefully, this concept of anti-gravity is taking almost a whole part in the modern technology. And I think this is the reason why every single scientist who tries to reveal the secret is silenced.
Who can forget the claims that at a facility called S4, not far from the famed Area 51, that the US has not one, but 7 captured flying saucers, which the government has reverse engineered. Those would all be amazing if they were true, but they're not.
I think you're also familiar with this type of analysis, where people think that the anti-gravity does not exist. But the funniest point here is that this man is from the biggest channel though, with almost 1 million subscribers. And this is actually what I've been telling you in my latest videos. When you rely on the wrong analysis, you end up getting confused and you won't even achieve a little effect from them. So the only solution to the situation is that you have to start carrying out your own experiments. This will help you more than just watching the YouTube videos. Whenever I say something in my video and you don't totally agree with it, you have to carry out the experiments about it, just to make sure. So when it comes to the thing we call anti-gravity or the electromagnetic propulsion force, it depends on how you want to call it, I totally believe it's real. But let me first get where this whole story started. Since Nikola Tesla invented the AC electricity, the idea of anti-gravity was born. And this actually got me wondering about this bad boy here called conductivity. To everyone who doesn't know what I mean when I talk about conductivity, conductivity is the key to everything when it comes to the electromagnetic propulsion systems. But I don't think you get it. This is the picture that I got when I was unearthing the propulsion procedures of Victor Schauberg's device. And I think it was my first time ever seeing that diagram on the internet. But the funny point here is that when you look closely on this diagram too, you also notice the paradises of chairs. So the question here is, why does every single flying model depends on this concept of conductivity? When you also get back where the whole story of the Sulfate generator started, it will directly take you to this clip from one of my interesting videos on the channel, where I explained how the idea of the Sulfate generator came. And I hope you understand it. So let's get to the video and I want you to take note if possible. In 1946, John Charles discovered that in a fast rotating disk, a radial driving force with a vertical vector appears. In order to increase this effect, he first magnetized the disk using permanent magnets. Inspired by his work, John Charles and John Searle tested a model outside. And already at a slow rotation, a strong difference of potentials occurred in the radial dilation of the rings, which actually caused the cracking of shards and the smell of ozone. Then something unexpected happened. The block of rings took off, and the disk kept spinning and floated about 1 meter above the ground. The object was surrounded by a pink glow, which signified the activation of the air at a drop in pressure. Do you remember what John Searle said? He mentioned that when conductivity switches, his craft is propelled by the air. The seg accumulates high electrostatic charge that ionize the surrounding air and envelop it in an intense vacuum. You should also ask yourself why some of the flying saucer depends on this concept of conductivity. This also relates to what Otis Car said. He said that the two rotating and counter-rotating charged bodies invokes rift. When you also look at the technologies of the alien flying saucers and other flying platforms which have no moving parts, conductivity comes first on the list. This was the picture of the SEG in the 1940s, and that is actually the way we should be understanding this flying platform, without using more mathematical terms and equations. But today when people talk about the SEG, this is the picture that actually comes to your mind, right? A bunch of coils surrounding the rotating magnets. And this is where the topic gets a little bit funny. I'm pretty sure you've seen a lot of videos from channels that were trying to replicate this device. At a slow rotation, the SEG accumulated the high electrostatic charge, which caused the crackling of charge in the of its own. To be honest, we actually know two Russians, Vladimir Roshin and Sergei Godin, tried to replicate John Charles' device. This guy visited John Charles in prison. They asked more about his device. Even though Charles didn't tell them the secret, they didn't give up until they finally built their own free energy device. At 350 kg, it gave 10 kV of electric power without using any fuel, and its weight dropped during rotation. But here we are today. We have permanent magnets, coils, and the surrounding press. That's all. How could these components produce high electrostatic charge that can ionize the surrounding air? This question popped up in my mind a few weeks ago. I was wondering why does every single concept about this device relates to how it can produce free energy. I also created a post about it in our Antigravity devices group, but more people selected that they have some opinions about its propulsion system. This signified that some of you guys have skills about this device, and if we put together, we could find the true analysis about it that can help us to replicate one. The problem is why don't we share the ideas? So, here's what I think. The SEG accumulates high electrostatic charge which ionizes the nearby air. Then the ionized air get enveloped in an intense vacuum, where it will easily be affected by the electromagnetic fields of the plates and the electromagnetic coils to produce thrust. The potentials created by the generator can reach even to highest levels due to the designs and the duration of the SEG, which makes high voltage flashover seem impossible. Unlike in other forms of electrical technology, the presence of electron flow through the generator actually cools it, reducing resistance. This is due to the free electrons being pulled out of the air, and the resulting energy causes the air to cool. It is also written that when the SEG reached the 4 Kelvin degree of coldness, it completely took off the ground. But my opinion on this is that we have to change the way we understand this device, right? Instead of learning more about the sales rows of squares, you have to take a pen and make your own schematics. That's the only way you will understand this device. So I think this video explains a lot more about the seal fake generator, especially when you look at this topic called conductivity. You don't even have to believe what I'm saying right now. You should listen to what John Seale said himself. He said that when conductivity switched, his platform was propelled by the air. You can also depend on what Odestikar said in one of his interviews when he said that the two rotating and counter-rotating charged bodies invokes rift. So all these are the proof which certify the real truth about conductivity. But when I talk about this, I don't want you to think about this type of videos. They are also important, but when you want to figure out something bigger, you have to go even farther.
What you just witnessed was an ionic thruster. Thrust was produced using ionic wind. Awesome concept. It has 0 moving parts and is powered by about 20,000 volts.
This is the clip that I got from one of the Plasma Channel's video, where he explained a lot more about the ionic wind and how this ionic wind provides hope for an anti-gravity platform. I really like his videos unless he tries to relate them to this concept of anti-gravity. He also uploaded a video a few weeks ago where he perfectly designed an ionic thruster, but it didn't take him anywhere. Think about that. The back shells uses only 4 electrostatic volts to achieve the effect of levitation, where one wing levitates over the other. But the ionic thruster here uses almost 30,000 electrostatic volts to lift only grams. Then how many volts will it require to lift the platform which weighs like Odyssey Car X1 in the air? That is definitely impossible because the electrostatic charge applied on the platform can even destroy anybody inside. So when I talk about conductivity, I don't want you to think in terms of the ionic wind, ionic thrusters, because you can even apply 1 million electrostatic volts and still get nothing. Let's jump to the next question. How does OTC-CAR X1 work, and how does it relate to this concept of conductivity? What do you know about this device? The OTC-X1 is one of the mysterious vehicles that ever existed, and when you even use YouTube search, you will find almost no video talking about this device. So, OTC-CAR was an inventor who also invented a flying platform, which was called OTC-X1. Using two counter-rotating metal plates, spinning electromagnets, and large capacitors which when spinning charged and powered by battery, it became activated by the free space energy. He also created a company that was supposed to advance and apply technologies suggested by Nikola Tesla, which was called OTC Enterprise. So what do we have in the model? In the OTC-CAR X1, we have central accumulator, neutrons, capacitor plates, C-shaped electromagnets, and the hollow. When it's running, the central segmented disk, actually the inner part, rotates in one direction, and the outer part rotates in another. This also applies to the gravifier because the upper disk and the lower disk rotate in different directions. And we actually know how to get this phenomenon on the gravifier. We use motors on both disks. But when it comes to the OTC-X1, this phenomenon gets a little bit different. Because the outer part of the craft doesn't get powered by the motor to start moving. So the question here is, how does this counter rotation produced? Let's take a look. This is what we have in the model. As demonstrated by left ring, this is how the neutron is positioned in the C-shaped electromagnets. Looking from the upward, neutron is like a circle, and it's like square on the side view. So when it's placed in the C-shaped electromagnets, there's a little space, almost no space between the neutrons and the electromagnets. Remember, on the OTC-X1, the inner disk is powered by battery to start running, but the outer shell doesn't get powered like that. You only turn on the C-shaped electromagnets. If you remember the experiment that I told you in the latest videos about the gravifier, I don't think you remember that, but take a little aluminum plate, put it on a table, and hold a strong neodymium magnet in your hand. Then move it fast near the plate. What did you experience? The only effect you're going to experience is that the aluminum plate will move a little bit in the direction of the magnet. The neutron is made of a big size of aluminum, so when you spin the disk inside the electromagnets, the neutrons will directly accelerate in a different direction. This means when the central disk is moving right, the neutrons will move left. Then at a certain acceleration of the central disk, the outer shell electromagnets will start moving in the same direction as the neutrons. Well, we actually know that the object gains mass the faster it accelerates to light speed. So this means we have to leave the counter rotations do the rest automatically. The neutrons will accelerate faster, and this will cause the rapid speed of the electromagnets. And when the outer shell rotation reaches the inner disk rotation, the craft will be activated by the energy of space. I think you're also asking yourself, how will this platform levitate above the ground? We have already activated the platform, but this is where the point gets more interesting. So if you first activated the platform, then how will this platform escape the Earth's gravity? This is actually the next question, and that is actually what we're going to solve today.
A gravitational potential is made when electromagnetic forces fight themselves to a draw, when, in other words, the gradients become zero. The gradient vectors, or the resultants, become zero, but the two forces are still in there slugging it out. All the energy is still going, the work is still going, but it's trapped locally. That's internal energy. That's what gravity is.
So let's get back to the video, and this will directly take us to this interview OTC-CAR with the media talking about his device. And here's actually what he said when he was asked the difference between the UFOs and his device. He said, "We don't know. We haven't had a chance to examine the objects we saw, but we acknowledge the use of the same principles. Our design uses gravity, electromagnetism, electromotive force, and the relation field to obtain its operational functionality." And when John asked if his chip would need the rocket system to take off the ground, this is actually what he said. "We take energy from air and from other dimensions. The Earth itself is a spaceship which demonstrates what we are stating. It is rotating and orbits at a constant speed within a magnetic field. Our planet is the propeller of our ship." When you take a closer look at these statements of Carr, I'm pretty sure you'll notice some of the interesting statements and keywords that will help you understand this model. For example here, he said we take energy from air and from other dimensions. This statement matches 100% with what John Seal said when he said that his craft was propelled by the air when conductivity switched. And this is what I've been telling you. I didn't know more about this interview before. But the first question that came to my mind after reading it is, why are these men's principles much related? I'm not building this story up because this is an old interview of this guy with the media when he was introducing his platform to the public. According to how Carl was answering the questions, it seems like he didn't want to expose the whole secret to the public. But he did use some of the statements that could tell people a little bit about the secrets that he was hiding. He also said the Earth is a spaceship which demonstrates what we are stating. It is rotating and orbits at a constant speed within a magnetic field. And this is actually what his craft do, because we first get it spinning, and then when the outer shell rotation matches the inner disk rotation, they said it gets activated by the free space energy. Then if the craft is already activated, the last method is to find out how the produced electromagnetic fields will help us to get propulsion. And I think you know how. This will directly take us to this man called James F. King Jr. In 1964, James F. King Jr. presented his apparatus on how the ionized region gets activated by the magnetic fields. And this will directly take us to this concept that I taught you in my latest videos, which is called MHD, or the magnetohydrodynamics. We use this method to directly affect the high recharge region around the craft so we can get propulsion when the spinings are in the right dilations. I think it sounds easier, right? But you have to understand that this is not something that you can wake up in the morning and start replicating. They said that the seg, when it was 1 meter above the ground, it produced a pink glow. So these things require a lot of experiments and a lot of analysis, and this is actually what I've been telling you in my latest videos. Well, maybe you've heard about the OTCX-1, SEG, Grebennikov's device, and many more. We know how advanced these platforms are, but I think I'm not the only one who have seen these UFOs videos on the internet. These UFOs are somehow scary when it comes to how they control nature. They move at light speeds, they sometimes perform the right angle turns, and they sometimes produce light when they're about to take a quick travel. Maybe you don't understand the right angle that I'm talking about. Suppose that I have a stone and I'm about to drop it on the ground. But before it gets to the ground, it immediately turns on the side and keeps moving. I think you're understanding how crazy this sounds because the stone has the initial force when it's moving, which makes it difficult for it to turn right or left. This phenomenon was also performed by the Aryan Production Vehicle, which is actually commonly known as the ARV. What I'm trying to tell you right now is that these platforms really needs attention when you are analyzing them and carrying out the experiments about them. Because I'm pretty sure that you noticed some of the interesting phenomena that you didn't even recognize before. So the OT61 generates high electrosignatures the more it accelerates to high speed. It is also said that the OT61 has some principles related to the motionless electrical generator, which will be used to solve the problems of less electrical power. This craft uses the principles of MHD drive. We charge the hollow with HV positive and the Tesla coil, and then HV negative on the bottom of the outer shell. The positive charge will accelerate downward on the negative electrons, forming fields. Then the central core will also form the electromagnetic flux lines running from the top to the bottom. When the frequency of the central core's electromagnetic field matches the electrostatic force field frequency, they will immediately resonate and develop another kind of fields which will be affected by the rotating electromagnetic fields produced by the C-shaped electromagnets, neutrons, and the capacitor plates. At this time the whole craft will be resonating, which means it will detect any change. Even when you try to stop the outer shell, you will directly feel the effect in the form of sound. At a certain acceleration, when the charge is already built up, the craft will start taking off the ground according to the dilations of the neutrons in the disk and the outer shell. This anti-gravity concept is large. When it comes to how people explain it, there is even others who doesn't believe the UFOs really exist. But don't worry about that, cause I'm preparing another interesting part of this video, which is actually part 2, where we'll be explaining a lot more about the other theories that we can use to gain reputation. And those analyses are mostly based on the OTCX1, and I know you will like them. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell so you won't miss that video, because it will be uploaded very soon on this channel.